Today's the day. We've been programming a chess engine, and today we will finally be able to play against our engine for the first time. Hello everyone, my name is Mike and you're watching Polymath Unlimited. In this series we are building a chess engine from scratch in C++. Last time we finished programming all of the code our engine needs to be able to play a complete game of chess from start to finish. Now that that is done, we can finally start giving our engine the ability to play its own moves. In order to keep our engine organized and readable, we will make a new search.h file and put a search class there that will handle all of this. For now, the search class will be very simple, simply containing a best move method that accepts a chessboard object by reference and returns what it thinks the best move would be in that position. We'll need to add more to this later, but this will get us started for now. To implement this method, we will create a search.cpp file and put the method implementation there. For now, in the best move method, we will first check to see if the state is terminal. If it is, we will return a garbage move, since the method does need to return something in all cases. Otherwise, we will generate moves and randomly select one of those moves to play, as long as it is legal. We will do this with a while loop, which loops as long as there are moves in the list. In the loop, we pick a random move and check to see if it is legal. If it is, then we will return that move. If not, we swap it with the last move in the list and decrement num moves and try again. Now in main.cpp, we need to include search.h and add a global search object so we can have our engine play moves. We will also add an AI turn variable to keep track of which side the AI is playing as. We'll set this to black for now. Now in the timer function, if it is the AI's turn and if the game is not over and we are not promoting a piece, we will have the search give us a move and put that move on the top of the move stack. Then we will make that move. We will also call the draw function before we do any of this, since the best move function may take some time to complete, as we'll see later. So we will draw the board before we search for the best move so that the user's move gets shown without delay on the screen. We'll also add one more part to the setup code in main. If the AI is playing white, then we will switch perspectives by calling the keydown function with the space key passed to it. There's also a slight bug in our draw function that we will fix real quick. When we mark the previous move, notice that when we set the line width, we set it to square size times 0.15. However, if the board is displayed from black's perspective, then the square size will be negative, which will cause weird effects sometimes. We should therefore replace square size with the absolute value of square size here to eliminate that issue. Now if we run the program, we should be able to make moves as white, and then black will respond by playing a random move on its turn. This means that at this point we can technically play against our engine. However, since it just makes random moves, it doesn't play very well at all. In fact, it would be trivially easy for even a novice player to beat our engine as it is now. Our first step to remedying that will be to give our engine a way to tell who is winning or losing in a given position. We will do this using something called an evaluation function. We'll add a new private method to our search class called evaluate, which will accept a chessboard as an argument and return an integer representing how much our program thinks one side is winning or losing. Going into our search.cpp file, we'll implement the evaluation function with a simple loop that counts all of the pieces of each type and accumulates the values of those pieces into a total score that gets returned. We'll use an array of piece values so that we can give each piece a different weight. Pawns will be worth 100 points. Knights and bishops will be worth 300 points, rooks will be worth 500 points, and queens will be worth 900 points. White pieces will add to the score, and black pieces will subtract from the score so that positive scores will indicate that white is winning, and negative scores will indicate that black is winning. Right now, we have implemented piece counting with the decrement and trick, but there's actually a better way to do this faster. Let's go to our bitops.h file and add a function called popcount. This function will take an unsigned 64-bit number and return how many bits in that number are ones. Then, similar to the LSB index and MSB index functions, we will return the appropriate built-in for the compiler we are using, or just fall back on the decrement and loop if no such built-in is available. Now, we can go back to our evaluation function and replace the loop that counts the bits in the bitboard with our popcount function. Now, we have a fairly reasonable way to tell which side is winning in a chess game. It should be noted that this evaluation function is certainly not the best we can do. Right now, it only accounts for which pieces are on the board. It does not take into account where those pieces are, or those pieces' positions relative to other pieces. However, this simple evaluation function is surprisingly effective for just getting us started, as we'll see in a moment. In a future episode, we will definitely revisit the evaluation function and make some major revisions and improvements. For now, though, let's move on to using our evaluation function to help our engine make more reasonable moves. Right now, our best move function simply returns a random legal move. A reasonable first step towards improving this would be to try to see what the result of each legal move would be and then return the move that leads to the best result. So we will start by making a best move variable. Then, if it is White's turn, we will initialize a best score variable to have some large negative value, then loop through all of the moves. For each move, if it is legal, we make the move, see what the evaluation gives as a result of that move, and then undo the move. If the resulting evaluation is greater than the current best score, then we will set best score equal to that score, and set best move to the move that resulted in that score. We will write similar code for Black, except that we need to initialize best score to some very large positive value, and update best score and best move if the move resulted in a lower score than best score. Then, after all moves have been assessed, we will return whichever move resulted in best score. This should theoretically result in White playing moves that try to increase the board's evaluation score, and Black playing moves that try to decrease the board's evaluation score. If we run the program, we should see that the engine now plays somewhat more reasonable moves than before. For example, if we leave our queen open to attack, then the engine will always capture it in response. However, the evaluation function is not a perfectly reliable indicator of who is winning. For example, watch what happens if we leave a pawn in a position where it is attacked by the enemy queen, but also defended by another piece. Our engine will still capture our pawn, since that increases the evaluation score. However, its queen can now be captured, which leaves us with a winning advantage. We need a way for our engine to look more than just one move ahead so that it can avoid these types of blunders. Fortunately, there's a very simple algorithm that does exactly this called Minimax. Let's add a Minimax function to our search class and implement it in our search.cpp file. Minimax will accept a board state and an integer depth argument and return a score. This function will be designed to look a certain number of moves ahead and determine what the evaluation score will be that many moves in the future, assuming both sides play optimally. The first thing our Minimax function needs to do is check to see if a board state is terminal. If it is, then if White has won, we will return a large positive value, and if Black has won, we will return a large negative value. If the game ended in a draw, we will return 0. Here, I have set the values to return in terminal states to positive or negative 1 million. This was kind of an arbitrary choice on my part. You can return any large numbers you want, as long as those numbers are larger than any possible result of the evaluation function. Next, we need to check to see if the depth the function was given is less than or equal to 0. If it is, then we will simply return the board's evaluation score. In all other cases, we need to search all of the legal moves in the position and determine the best possible resulting score from all of these moves. We will do this in a very similar way to the way we did this in our best move function. We will generate all pseudo-legal moves, then loop through them. If it is White's turn, then we will try to maximize the best score, and if it is Black's turn, then we will try to minimize the best score. This is where the Minimax algorithm gets its name. There are two main differences between what we are doing here and what we tried to do in best move, though. First, we don't need to return a move, so there's no need to keep track of the best move, only the best score. Secondly, when searching through moves, instead of scoring moves based on the evaluation function, we score moves by recursively calling the Minimax function with a depth of 1 less than the current Minimax call. This is where the magic really happens. Because we are recursively calling the Minimax function, we are looking deep into the game tree and choosing moves that guarantee the best possible outcome within a certain number of moves, assuming both sides play optimally. Now, let's add a depth argument to our best move method, Then, instead of scoring moves based on the evaluation after making those moves, we will instead score the moves based on the result of calls to Minimax. This means that when choosing a best move to return, we are choosing a move that guarantees the best result looking that many moves in advance, which will greatly reduce our engine's tendency for tactical blunders. Now we just need to update our main.cpp code by adding an AI depth global variable and passing that depth to the best move function call in our timer function, and we should be good to go. Here I have set AI depth to 5, which means that our engine will be looking 5 moves ahead in the game tree. If we run the program, we should see that our engine actually seems capable of playing decently well at this point. It makes some rather strange moves in the opening, but that is mostly down to the fact that our simple evaluation function only takes piece counts into account and ignores any positional features like which square each piece is on. We will fix that in a future episode. One more thing I want to add here really quick before we are done for this episode is some way to measure the engine's performance. Since our engine can't play against other engines just yet, that will be hard to do right now. However, there is one metric we can measure at this point called nodes per second that should give us roughly an idea of how well our engine is performing technically so far. Nodes per second measures how quickly our engine can search through the game tree. Higher nodes per second means our engine can search faster, which means it should theoretically be able to perform better. We can check nodes per second by simply adding a nodes searched member variable to our search class. In best move, we will set nodes searched to 0, and every time we call Minimax, we will increment nodes searched. We will also add another public method called getNodesSearched to the search class that will allow us to see how many nodes were searched during the most recent best move call. Then, in main.cpp, when we use the best move method to make an AI move, we will get a start time before calling best move and an end time after calling best move. We can then calculate the elapsed time and print both the number of nodes searched and the nodes per second to the console. If we run the program now, we should see that this data does get printed for us. We can see that on my computer, this engine is capable of running at around 4 or 5 million nodes per second. Note that I am compiling the program in release mode and not debug mode. Release mode compiles the program without any debug code enabled, which makes the program run much faster. The exact speed the engine runs will also be dependent on your hardware. Obviously, faster hardware will run the engine faster and vice versa. So how does 4 or 5 million nodes per second stack up to other engines? Well, Stockfish, which is currently the best chess engine ever made, typically searches a few tens of millions of nodes per second on consumer-level hardware, depending on how many threads it is running on. So if those numbers are accurate, then our engine is already very good in that regard, though not quite into Stockfish territory. Right now, this engine is only running on a single thread, but I may explore converting the engine to run on multiple threads in the future to speed things up. However, raw nodes per second are not enough on their own to make a strong chess engine. Most of Stockfish's strength comes from advanced evaluation features and an extremely well-optimized search routine. Our engine right now takes several seconds to search moves out to a depth of 5 plies. In that same time, Stockfish can search moves at depths of 20 or more. A lot of this difference has to do with our Minimax search. The way it is structured right now, it is searching absolutely every single node in the game tree within 5 plies of the current game state. This is often tens or even hundreds of millions of nodes. On average, there are about 30 legal moves from any given chess position, which means that each level of search depth multiplies the required search time by approximately 30. So since our engine takes several seconds to search moves at depth 5, it would take several minutes to search to depth 6 and several hours to search to depth 7. Obviously, we won't be able to search to very high depths this way. Luckily, there are some tricks that we can use to cut branches off the game tree and make it so that the engine will only search branches that are interesting, vastly reducing the search time. We'll leave that for a future episode, though. Right now, our next big concern will be testing our engine against other engines to see how well it actually performs in real games. That way, we will be able to get very accurate performance data that we can use to scientifically measure how each change we make to the engine affects its performance moving forward. We'll do that in the next episode by adding support for the Universal Chess Interface to our program, which will enable us to pit our engine against other engines that also run the Universal Chess Interface. Until then, feel free to play around with this program. Now that the engine is technically operational, you really can play around with it or against it if you prefer. Have any ideas for features you want to see me add to this program? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you for watching. Thanks to all of my subscribers, and I will see you next time.